First, let me recognize our mayor, Mayor Jack Young. Joining us also is Madam State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby, U.S. Attorney Rob Hur, our City Council President Brandon Scott, Councilman Isaac Yitzi Schleifer, the Chair of the Public Safety Committee. We have all of the other members of our Baltimore City Council, and we have members from our city's state delegation in Annapolis. Joining us also is Ganesha Martin from the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. And we want to say thank you for everybody being here. It's important that we are all here today. And so thank you for joining us as we publicly release our 5-year departmental transformation plan and our crime reduction strategy, which will serve as roadmaps that will guide the Baltimore Police Department in both long-term and in the short term. And while we are presenting these two plans in separate documents, I think you'll see that they very much go hand in hand. Because when the department operates more efficiently and more effectively, we will better be able to reduce, deter, and to prevent crime. Let me take a few minutes to go over some of the most important elements of the plans. First, our deployment strategy will be guided by the following principles: a community-oriented policing approach that emphasizes working with the community. Number 2, a problem-oriented approach that encourages officers to focus on ways to fight crime. Number 3, it's intelligence-led policing that focuses on using criminal intelligence and research analysis to drive operational and deployment decisions. And enhanced guardianship, which focuses on more visible police presence in the community to include more foot patrols in our micro-zones, business checks in high crime areas, and regular attendance at community meetings. In addition, we need to consider not just where crime is occurring, but when it is happening. Using data-driven approaches, district by district, our command staff will be directing our efforts to focus on specific days of the week, times of the day, and locations where crimes are being committed most frequently over the previous 6 months. In our new vision for the department, we have now established a path for making us one of the finest police departments in the country. All of the issues that we face revolve around one of 7 core focus areas: crime reduction, community engagement, consent decree compliance, creating a culture of accountability, connectivity, or upgrading and improving the technology we use, capacity building, and central to everything, communication. The crime plan takes a comprehensive approach that includes establishing performance goals for patrol officers, detectives, supervisors, and commanders, deploying new technological advancements, returning shooting and robbery detectives back to the district level, the civilianization and professionalization of administrative tasks, redesigning a more robust CompStat process, and strengthening our relationships with local, state, and federal law enforcement partners, as well as our for-profit and nonprofit and anchor institutions here in Baltimore. A great example of this is an initiative the State's Attorney Mosby and I have developed to conduct a weekly case review of homicides, non-fatal shootings, and armed robberies to enhance the quality of criminal cases that the BPD builds that the State's Attorney Office prosecutes. And because we all know that violence reduction cannot be accomplished by policing alone, we also emphasize the importance of a multidisciplinary approach to crime reduction that brings in external stakeholders to focus on prevention, intervention, rehabilitation, and reentry. Enforcement, while it is critical, is but one component. The long-term plan also emphasizes the need to recruit new officers and retain the officers we currently have. We need to ensure that there's a robust pipeline of new officers being hired, not just to keep up with attrition, but to grow the size of the department, which will both make the city safer and ease the burden on existing officers. To that end, as you all know, last week we launched a world-class digital marketing campaign that I think will significantly boost our recruitment numbers. The early results of that campaign are very encouraging. Finally, let me say that these plans are living documents. We will frequently assess and reassess our plans, our goals, and our strategies, and make adjustments when and where necessary. The plans mark the first step in a continuous process that will use data-driven and evidence-based approaches to prevent, disrupt, and deter violent crime and to solve crimes when they occur. We all know there's a lot of work to do to make the Baltimore Police Department the department we all want it to be, and Baltimore the city it should be. But as I've said before, and I'll say it again, I'm certain that when working together, the police and the community as one, we will get there. So I'd like to personally thank Mayor Young, the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, our State's Attorney, Marilyn Mosby, and U.S. Attorney Rob Herr, who all contributed to the development of these documents, as well as all of our partners in local, state, and federal law enforcement and government who are critical to our success, including Governor Hogan, who I will be sitting down with to discuss this in the coming weeks. So it is now my pleasure to introduce to you our Mayor, Mayor Jack Young.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. The Commissioner already noted the elected leaders here by name, but I want to acknowledge Councilman Eric Costello, Councilman Christopher Burnett, Councilwoman Mary Pat Clark, Councilman Robert Stokes, Delegate Attar, and Delegate Regina Boyce. First, I wanted to take a moment to publicly acknowledge the bravery and heroism of two of our own, Sergeant Bill Shiflett and Officer Christopher Miller. Sergeant Shiflett, a 25-year veteran of the force, was struck in the line of duty on Monday, and my first stop after landing at BWI was to go to shock trauma to meet with him and his family and thank him for his courage under fire while he recovers. Officer Miller, a third-year officer, put his life on the line to pull Sergeant Shiflett out of danger after he was shot at the scene. We all know this is a tough job, but these two are models for the 21st century police force Commissioner Harrison is building, and I just want to again sincerely thank them for their service. I'm committed to supporting the Baltimore Police Department's crime reduction and departmental improvement plan, and we know that they cannot do this alone. We understand that law enforcement is critical, but incomplete responses to violence. If working alone, enforcement and prosecution strategies will still only temporarily stop perpetrators of violence. This must be a collective and collaborative effort. As a city, we must strengthen alternative systems and responses to violence that are community-driven and evidence-based. To achieve real and sustained reduction in violence, we must all work together. Everyone in this city has skills and experience that will help us to improve public safety. During my first few months as mayor, it has been my priority to hear from community partners and criminal justice experts. Throughout those meetings and interviews, the theme is clear. The individuals driving violence are some of the most traumatized in our city. We must listen to the communities plagued by violence and respond accordingly with evidence-based and trauma-informed interventions. And we must also recognize the structural and racial inequities that have concentrated this investment. Because of these historic injustices, it is not a coincidence violence is concentrated in a small number of hot spots and driven by a small percentage of individuals. Working with the Baltimore Police Department and the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, we will focus with laser precision on those people and places that are driving the violence, with the goal of creating comprehensive and collaborative approaches. We will work with the community to understand what is needed to reach those who wish to turn their lives around. And with that understanding, we will create an ecosystem of services that are evidence-based and proven to work. While job and unemployment must be a component of this ecosystem, it will not succeed if we don't also address the trauma. Doing this is the first critical step that is often overlooked when individuals want to turn their lives around. This ecosystem will consist of evidence-based programs like cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps individuals reframe their responses and behavior. It will also include transitional employment approaches that help individuals build the skills necessary for full employment. While we recognize that poor and minority communities disproportionately experience homicides and shootings, everyone in this city is impacted, and everyone has a responsibility to contribute to the solutions. My office stands ready to work collaboratively with Baltimore Police Department, city agencies, community organizations, nonprofits, and the philanthropic community to build this comprehensive response and ecosystem. I understand that in the coming weeks, The Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice will be providing their complementary strategies to ensure we are all working towards the same shared goals of violence reduction. I am truly optimistic about our city's future with this new crime plan to guide us for the next 5 years, and I ask that as a city, we collectively work to bring about the change in Baltimore we all want to see. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you. This time we'll hear from our Council President, Brandon Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Commissioner Harrison. Thank you, Mayor Young. I'm honored to be here with all our colleagues in government for this most important and historic day for Baltimore. Focusing on violence and reforming BPD has been my top priority since I've been in office, and I'm extremely thankful for Commissioner Harrison and the Mayor for finally presenting us with a crime plan. This is something that the city has gone without for far too long. As taking the chair of public safety in 2017, one of the first things that I did was get the council together and we demanded a crime plan. We did not get that until today. So today is a significant thing. We were never presented with something that we can take out to the citizens, that the citizens of Baltimore can see, that we can believe in, that we can hold BPD accountable for. So we are grateful to Commissioner Harrison and for the mayor for pushing him to do that. We are very also pleased that the commissioner understands that this has to be a comprehensive approach and that he's willing to work with our state's attorney, to work with our federal partners, to work with the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, but most importantly that he recognizes that this is not his job alone, that he is just one cog in a wheel of how we are going to rid Baltimore of this disease known as gun violence. So we are also very ecstatic that Director Martin and MOCJ are working tirelessly to come and present their portion of the crime plan, but we will be remiss if I did not highlight some of the great things that are in the crime plan that the council itself has been asking for. The commissioner already mentioned doing analysis and call burden so that our police officers can spend more time proactively being in neighborhoods, building those relationships with community members, with businesmen, with young people, more importantly, doing an analysis of the department to see where his resources need to go, where people need to be, how many people we need to be, making the department more professional by civilianizing. This is something that we know this department has needed for such a long time, and now we have a leader of a department in Commissioner Harrison that recognizes this is something that we need to do now and immediately in order for the department to make Baltimoreans safe. And lastly, I'll mention that he knows that we have to modernize the way that we respond to calls. We also have to have a focus on group violence and group violence reduction because we know most of the crime in Baltimore is small groups of people and other small groups of people. The council still will be there to hold the commissioner accountable to this plan, but more importantly, we will be there and be a partner to make sure that we are making sure that they can be as successful as possible while we also await MOCJ and making sure that their agency and all the agencies in Baltimore have a great impact in attacking this disease of gun violence for a comprehensive view. So I am greatly appreciative and thankful to be here today so that now Baltimore has a crime plan and we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll ask my partners in criminal justice if they wish to say a few words. Our State's Attorney, Marilyn Mosby, and U.S. Attorney, Rob Hur.
So I am incredibly encouraged today by the release of this comprehensive crime plan. Having worked with 5 police commissioners in 3 years and 3 mayoral administrations, I'm incredibly encouraged. And not just because Commissioner Harrison had the foresight to actually monument a crime strategy and plan, but he's taken a holistic approach. And when you look at our city, it is incredibly important to take a holistic approach and to understand that it can't just be an enforcement perspective. And so, as you will see, we are, as in the State's Attorney's Office, dedicated to continuing to work with the police department and our federal partners and the City Council and the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, and this is just the start. And we know that we can't do this by ourselves. So when you look at, police, they risk their lives, and we see that from Sergeant Shiflett this week, each and every day for us. I have prosecutors who get out into these courtrooms every single day and have to go against the barriers of distrust among our communities. We know at the end of the day, one of the biggest stakeholders in all of this is the community. And even in this report and in this plan, we talk about the need for community support. And so I'm incredibly encouraged, and I think this is a one step in the right direction, but one that we are all committed to continuing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. A key component of the Commissioner's crime plan and vision and strategy for reducing violence in our city is collaboration and cooperation with federal partners. And I'm here to say and to reaffirm once again the commitment of the entire federal law enforcement community to standing shoulder to shoulder and doing the hard work that's required going forward to reduce violence in our city. So all of the brave men and women in the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, DEA, ATF, and U.S. Marshals Service, the entire federal law enforcement community, we are all in. We understand that all hands need to be on deck. An example of this is the public safety partnership that we announced the launch of earlier this week, in which we are bringing to bear the entire panoply of modern-day, state-of-the-art policing techniques and tactics. We're going to bring that all to bear to Baltimore because if other cities have benefited from these types of ideas and tactics and techniques, we need to be bringing those tools here to Baltimore in the fight against violent crime. Thank you very much.
1 second. Mr. Mayor. Mr. President. Chairman. Everyone will get a hard copy of the crime plan and the 5-year reduction strategy in just a few moments. At this time, we'll take any questions you might have.
This 10-minute performance goal, what is the response time now, and why is it important to lay that goal out on paper?
So the response time varies. The importance of that goal was the department had not in the past had a response time goal. And so there are a number of goals that we want to set for our department so that we can appropriately and scientifically assess how many officers we need and how to best utilize those officers and where they need to be. One of the first steps is creating a response time goal. Now, we get to emergency responses, people with lives in danger, crimes in progress, and perpetrators still on the scene. We get to those extremely fast, but now we have a written goal that we can work to achieve and then make sure we can improve on that goal.
Commissioner, what is, from the viewpoint of the public, how will they see that something has changed? Or how will they see this plan? What will they see that they'll make them say, oh, okay, there's a new plan?
Well, in the plan are the micro community policing strategies that will allow commanders and community members to create, in collaboration, the community policing model for that district, which is not a cookie-cutter approach for the entire city, because what might be needed in one district could be very different than what citizens would want and like to see in another district. So they could immediately see more foot patrols. They could immediately see more engagement, more enforcement, and more enforcement where it needs to be, when it needs to be. And so those are things they can see, I think, immediately. This is a comprehensive 5-year strategy to improve our department and improve the foundational structure of our department to bring it to good performance and really great performance. And then there's the crime reduction plan based on where crimes are occurring, when they are occurring, specifically to days of week and times of day, so that we can deploy there based and move away from a geography-based deployment into a data-driven, crime-centric deployment.
Sir, these microzones, how often will it be redrawn based on new information? In Chicago, with their predictive policing model, these boxes are generated at the beginning of every shift. Is that where you would like to get to based on hot data coming in overnight or over a shift? Or
what we found was 5 years of data in homicide shootings and armed robberies. And that 5 years of data in those 3 categories showed us where those crimes were occurring historically, and they pretty much had not moved over the 5-year period. So as we deployed to that, if there's some displacement effect, this is about assessment and reassessment. The key component of the strategy and the improvement plan is accountability metrics, performance metrics and accountability measures to make sure our people are producing the right outputs to produce the right outcomes. If we see that it's moving and displacing, we could reassess that. But over the 5-year period, that's where those 3 violent crimes have been occurring. And then we looked at 6 months of CAD data, computer-aided dispatch data, to show what day of week and what times of day those crimes are occurring in those zones, so we can appropriately deploy people to those areas, specifically on what days of week and times of day we historically see those crimes.
during your first few weeks, you spoke to business leaders about some of the things they can do to help. Now that this plan has been released, what are some of the things that the business community can do to help you in implementing
Well, I think it's all about coordination, collaboration, and communication. And certainly, you heard me talk about us being partners with for-profit and nonprofit and anchor institutions in our city. It will be all of us at the table to put all of our minds and resources together to make sure we can grow our department, we can improve our facilities, improve working conditions, and retain the great people who are already here as we improve technology and reduce burdens. And so they will be extremely instrumental in helping us, because many times they have the capacity and the expertise to do that they can bring to bear and help us bring those things to bear.
Commissioner, in April, the LAPD pulled the plug on a program similar to what's described in these reports out of concerns by civil rights groups. How will Baltimore's program be different?
I think what LA did was a predictive policing issue that they moved away from. This is not a predictive policing issue. This is what they call criminal social networking and crime analysis that only helps us through data and intelligence-led policing identify individuals and how they are connected to other individuals, days, times, location, things, people, and events.
You talk about recruiting and retention of officers. There's no magic number in the report. Do you have a number in your head of how many officers you want on the streets, and also civilianizing some of those administrative roles and using civilians to recruit new officers as well? Why is that?
Well, we want to improve the net gain, and we want to grow the department far beyond the attrition rate to make sure that there's always a net gain, and we can grow the net gain by bringing in more young officers, but retaining the officers we have for longer periods of time. But it is in concert and at the same time with reducing burdens, learning about the calls that are not police-related that we can move away from, and then moving more to technology-driven approaches to reporting by having a digital environment and moving away from a paper-based environment of handwriting reports, and then moving calls to, if you noticed in the plan, moving things to telephone and a web-based reporting. I'd like to see about 20% of all reports written move to a web-based reporting. That frees up time, and then it builds in the capacity to then say, we have a 10-minute response time goal, or maybe improve on that. Then, having the free time to carve out time for community policing and for hotspot policing when and where it needs to be that doesn't affect the response time or other operations, because we've removed the burdens while bringing in more people, keeping more people, and taking some of the work away.
And in terms of, is there a magic number for the number of officers you want to see in the department?
Well, right now, we're still in the assessment phase. And until we have the appropriate technology, and until we can become as efficient as the technology and the human capital will allow us to be, I think it's almost impossible to really know that, because the number now in a paper-based environment is going to be a different number with a technology environment.
Commissioner, just to follow up with that, the staffing plan that was done for the consent decree last year found a 26% vacancy control. The rest of the department is pretty well staffed. Is that staffing plan now irrelevant based on the work you're doing, the assessments you're doing, in terms of the proper staffing level on control versus other divisions in the department?
It is not irrelevant, but we are underway with a staffing plan with a consultant as we speak that will be producing results in the next couple of months. Surveys and focus groups and interviews are underway as we speak, and they are assessing every part of our department based on the goals and objectives that we set and gave to them. And that's forthcoming in the next couple of months. It is not irrelevant, but we're learning from it. And the staffing in patrol has been geography-based, based on fair distribution of labor across every square inch of the city, and not crime-centric when and where crimes are committed. And so we're now moving to a data-driven approach to where and when crimes are committed. Although we're not neglecting the other areas, there's still a patrol strategy to account for every area of the city.
Sir, with the technology upgrade that you're speaking about, when realistically would we be able to see that? We've talked before, you said the infrastructure for the technology is woefully underperforming at this point and needs to be updated. And in the report, it says records management systems, data integration solutions, everything is still in silos. When do we obliterate that, and when does this department start functioning like?
We hope to have that funding in the near future, and then go through the appropriate processes of procuring that software and those hardware and the training that goes along with that. We hope to do that as fast as possible.
And the new academy, the new facilities for the academy, is there a thought there? Where is that in the plan?
That's in the plan. The mayor and I have already toured the University of Baltimore's law school, and there's a plan to move this year our academy to the University of Baltimore Law School.
Commissioner, how did you go about identifying the top 25 most violent drug trafficking organizations?
Say that again?
How would they identify the top 25?
Working with our federal and state partners, there's a methodology and a criteria that we assess to determine the risk factors for the individuals and the groups, and they would determine based on a set of criteria that I don't have in front of me at the moment. But it's a set of criteria that in policing, there's a scientific methodology that we use to determine who they are by individuals and groups.
Any idea how much all of this is going to cost to implement everything that's mentioned?
Well, this is a 5-year vision strategy, and so certainly there's a cost. We don't know, but it will be a combination of government support, both local, state, and federal, and non-for-profit and for-profit and philanthropy, all pulling together to help us.
Will it reduce overtime?
I'm sorry?
Will it reduce overtime?
Well, as we become more effective and efficient and put more accountability metrics on our department at every level, from the officer all the way to my office, yes, we will work to reduce overtime. All right?
State's Attorney, it's important to you, I'm sure, to see that data analyst brought in there. What do you hope that analyst, first off, is that position filled, and what do you hope detectives here learn from that position in terms of prosecuting cases?
So it's incredibly important, as you stated, for us to have that collaborative analyst. And this is something that I've actually requested for some time now, as far as collecting data and being able to kind of make an assessment, not just from the management perspective and administration of the office, but to be able to report that data back to the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice and the Police Department, that would hopefully be able to improve upon training and/or any sort of the quality of the cases that we're prosecuting. So I'm encouraged by the fact that, you know, that was one of the requests that was made and put into the plan.
What had been historically missing?
So we don't have data analysts in the state's attorney's office, unfortunately. We've gone, and we have a couple of analysts that we've gone and gotten grants for, but that collaborative analyst that could look at the data and the case review, go through it, and basically say, you know, this is the problem that we're seeing when it comes to having to no pros or to dismiss these types of cases. That information can then be reported back to the police department so that that can improve their case review and their investigations. So again, this was something that we didn't have before, but something that we collaboratively came together and realized that we needed.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate you being here.